What's up guys, this is Al, and in today's episode we're going to be talking about a drip irrigation system. A lot of people ask what is my secret to growing all the trees that I have here in my nursery. They look beautiful, and I can tell you, I don't use any magical juices. I know you guys want me to tell you exactly what you need to buy in order to be successful. There's nothing that you can buy to actually make your plants grow better. But there's one thing that you can actually do, and that is you need to install a drip irrigation system. The two main killers of plants in my area are, one, not enough water, two, people watering by hand. We humans are not consistent. I don't care how consistent you think you are. Here in my area right now, if you miss watering your plants by a few hours in full sun, your plant is dead. But you know what will fix that? A drip irrigation system, an automatic system. So I'm gonna break down all the components of a drip irrigation system, step by step, and by the end of this video, you are gonna be an expert, and your plants are going to thank you. Let's go ahead and get started. All right guys, so what is a drip irrigation system? Well, a drip irrigation system is exactly what it sounds like. It is an automatic system that will control the watering for your plants. Now, this system has different components. The first component in this system is going to be a timer, just like this one right here. This timer is connected to an outlet right here where it gets its power. Now, this timer right here will control how often and how long you water your plants and how many times a day. You can control everything. You can even install a rain sensor on it, so if it rains, it will stop watering your plants. There are so many different choices that you can actually set up through the timer that it will take an entire video just to explain. But just to give you a quick summary of what the timer does, it will control how often you water your plants and then how long. The second component of an irrigation system is going to be your valves. Now, your timer can either be a 24 volt or a 12 volt system. If you have your timer plugged into an outlet, it's going to be a 24 volt system. Now, this valves right here, as you can see all these wires right here, well, these wires get connected to your timer individually. You're going to have a common wire that will connect all the valves together, and then you're going to have one wire coming out of each valve that will connect to your timer. Now, your timer will send a signal to these valves right here, when to turn on and when to shut off. And this solenoids right here, it's what actually gets the signal. Now, these valves right here are broken down into different zones. Why? Because you have to understand, you can only push so much water through each line, and once you actually reach its maximum capacity, then you need to break it off into a different zone. Let me explain. So the line that I have right here, it's a 3/4 inch line. And this line waters 1, 2, 3, and 4 rows before I start losing pressure. If I put any more rows on that, then my pressure will go down, and then at that point, well, my plants are not going to get consistent watering. So that brings us to the third component of a drip irrigation system, and that is going to be your piping or your tubing. As you can see, I use poly tubing, which is very easy to work with, and this is what's going to each individual valve. From the valves, it comes down this way, and then I put a T. So this is going to be the main trunk. And as you can see, I got a T right here that goes down to each individual row. And this is for my container plants. So I have 4 rows like this per valve. And remember, the reason I have it that way is because if I have any more, I will start losing pressure. Meaning, when the system comes on, if I have too many of them plugged in, well, you can see this is full pressure. Well, the pressure is going to go down, and I don't want that, because then the watering is going to be inconsistent depending on which drippers get more pressure or less pressure. And that brings us to the third component of a drip irrigation system, and that is going to be your spaghetti lines. Now, as you can see, the main trunk is going to be the secondary main trunk is going to be this one right here, coming off the main trunk. Now, from here, you're going to plug in your spaghetti lines, which it's going to be this little flexible lines right here using a coupling. This coupling goes in the main line right here. It just snaps in place. You make a little hole with a tool meant to make holes in this type of tubing. And then from there, you can bring your spaghetti line, which is either going to be 1/4 of an inch or 1/8 of an inch. For most of you guys out there, it's going to be 1/4 inch. Now, if you have, a few thousand plants in containers, then I highly recommend the 1/8 of an inch line. But for most people, 99% of people watching this video right now, 1/4 inch line will suffice. And then from there, you're going to go to your drippers. So if you have containers, I highly recommend you to use this spot spitters. I use this on all my plants, and besides then getting clogged every once in a while, which is going to be normal for them to get clogged every once in a while, especially if you have sediments in your water or if you get calcium, that is normal. But I like them because the stake is built into the dripper. You can stick it in there and your plant is going to get water. Now, these spot spitters come in different categories. The gray ones are 3.4 gallons an hour, and then you also have bigger ones that will put out more water. But in my experience, to be honest, I like these ones right here because they put out enough water to water my containers, whether they are in a little container like a 1 gallon like this, to a big container like this 25-gallon sapodilla right here, which I have 2 emitters in there. Even though one will suffice, I have 2 just in case one gets clogged, because this is a very expensive tree right here. So I have to have a backup plan in case one stops working. So that is my setup for my drip irrigation system for my container plants. Now let's talk about the setup for my in-ground plants, which is not really that different. So these are the valves that control the front yard of my house. I'm still working on it. As you can see, I need to clean this area up. But anyway, so these valves right here, for most people, they're going to be underground. And the reason why they're underground is because, well, they're out of the way, and that way you can walk around them without stepping on them and breaking them. But the valves are the same. And if you stick to the end of the video, I'm going to be recommending what makes a good valve and not brands that I use, why I use them, the most common issues you're going to run into these valves, and everything else about it. But anyways, let's talk about pressure regulators. So whenever you're setting up your manifold like this, regardless of the valve system that you have, a lot of people are going to tell you do not use a pressure regulator. And some people are going to tell you use them. Well, I use them because I do this for a living as well. I do a lot of irrigation. I have installed many irrigation systems for a lot of people out there, and I've seen the issues that arise from not using a pressure regulator like this one. So this one right here is a 25 psi pressure regulator. So the pressure coming into the valves, the city pressure in my area, it's about 80 psi. So it comes out 80 psi, and then it brings it down to 25 psi. And then, as you can see, it goes into my poly tubing right here. So this drip irrigation system right here, the piping, especially poly tubing, it is not meant to be run on higher pressure. When you first hook it up without a pressure regulator, it's going to work. You're not going to notice any difference at all. And actually, it's going to be a good thing for you because, like I said, you can actually use more drippers per zone if you don't use a pressure regulator. But the problem is, over time, these pipes right here, they're not going to burst. Your dripper heads are not going to come off. What's actually going to happen, your pipes are going to wear out a lot faster with the higher pressure. What usually happens, you're going to get leaks. Any scratches on the pipe, that's exactly where your leaks are going to come from, especially if you're running higher pressure. But by using a pressure regulator, it keeps everything under specs, and it will make your system last a lot longer. So that will be the main difference between using a pressure regulator and not using one. It will make your system last longer. So we talked about the drippers for my container plants. The spot spitters work great. I'm using 100% on all my container plants. But what do I use in the ground? In the ground, I like to use these drippers right here. These are called flag drippers, and this one specifically right here, it's a 4-gallon-an-hour dripper. Why do I like this one? Well, for one, I have been using these for many, many years. I would say about 6 years now. And not once have I ever had any issues with them, except for the random one that gets broken because somebody stepped on it. But other than that, no issues at all. And another benefit to this dripper right here is the head will come off. You can actually pull it out. In case you get dirt inside your system, you can clear it out and then put it back on, and your system will keep on running. Very easy to use, and one of the main benefits I like about this one is that it will put out 4 gallons of water in 1 hour. 4 gallons, okay? Consistently. Sometimes a little less, sometimes a little more. Nothing in life is perfect, but 4 gallons an hour. As you can see, this is a fig tree right here. This fig has 2 drippers in there. So in 1 hour, it will get 8 gallons of water. Now, when I water this general area right here, it's mainly plants with deep roots or tap roots. So this general area right here, all the way around, will get water for 4 hours straight. And then it shuts off for about an hour, and then it will come on again for 4 hours. So, and then it will shut off again, and then will come off again for 4 hours. So for a total of 12 hours straight. And since these trees here have deep roots or tap roots, they only get watered about once every 5 or 6 days. I have to check my timer. But there is no way I could water like that by hand. I know a lot of you guys are gonna tell me you are consistent, your garden looks amazing, and you don't need a drip irrigation system. But I can tell you, when you have a lot of trees, there's no way you're gonna be able to be that consistent and water this many trees right here. If I was using a water hose, I will have to put the hose right here for several hours and then go to each individual tree and then water each individual tree, and that will take days. And I don't know how about you guys, but there has been many times where I forgot, put the hose there, and then it ran for an entire day, and then my other trees did not get water. So by having a drip irrigation system, it automates everything. I don't have to do anything. I can go on my timer, I can set it how often to water, how long to water, and I'm done. My trees get consistent water at the same time every single time I tell the timer to water. You're not gonna be able to do that by hand, especially as you start growing your garden, your fruit forest, whatever you wanna call it. There's no possible way you're gonna be able to water your plants by hand. And in my area, hand watering. Watering plants by hand, it's the main killer of plants right now, because people are busy, people work, people have lives, and people do not understand how fast plants will die in my area without water. This is a Java plum, also known as jamun. This tree is in a 5-gallon container, fully rooted in this container. My drip irrigation system right now is coming on 4 times daily for 10 minutes each time. But check this out. On that 10-minute interval, it will only water for 2 minutes. And then it will shut off for 5 minutes. And then it will water again for 2 minutes. And then it will shut off again for 5 minutes. For a total of 5 times. And the reason I have it set that way, which is one of the features on my timer, which most timers have it, is called soak cycle or water saving cycle. And the reason I have it that way is because in 2 minutes time, it will soak the container, but it will minimize runoff like this. I actually have to adjust it. I probably need to water for maybe 1 minute and 30 seconds instead of 2 minutes straight. But it will prevent runoff. That way I don't waste that much water. There is no possible way you're gonna be able to do that by hand. Times thousands, guys. When I first started, I used to water by hand using a hose. In this entire area right here, which is, to be honest, for a nursery is not even that big, it's only a few thousand trees, it took 6 hours every single day to water all these plants. And I didn't understand, because by the time I got done watering, a lot of my plants was wilted and they were dying. And I didn't understand why, because I spent all that time watering my plants and being a good gardener, you know, taking care of my trees, and then they still died. Because you have to understand, a lot of the times when you water by hand, depending on the potting mix that you use, some potting mixes are gonna be hydrophobic because they're too dry. So you can soak this container completely all the way to the top, the water will drain, but the potting mix will not actually absorb any of that water. It will give you the impression that you actually water, everything's good to go, but you give it an hour, 2 hours, and then the pot is completely dry. And that's what happened to some of these plants right here. They went dry because, as you can see, they're not on a drip irrigation system. I was watering by hand, and then I thought they were wet, and then even now I made a mistake, and guess what? They went dry. So some of them had root damage, but some of them they went dry. And if I actually had then plugged into my drip irrigation system, this would have never happened, because my drip irrigation system comes on for a few minutes and then it shuts off, and then again for a few minutes and then shuts off. It actually allows the potting mix to soak the water instead of wasting water, and at the end of the day you use more water and then your plants are not even being watered correctly. So that's one of the main benefits of a drip irrigation system. So there are many different types of drippers out there, but I can tell you the flag drippers are the main ones that I'm going to recommend for watering individual trees. But let's say you have a bed like this one right here, and let's say you want to water a bigger area because you have a bunch of little plants, and it's not feasible to actually run a little dripper to each individual plant. So you want to water the entire area. So what do? You can put a sprayer in that general area. And as you can see, this is an adjustable sprayer and it covers an area. I think this area is easily about, I don't know, I want to say 4 by 4 to 6 by 6. Huge area. So that little sprayer will water all these little plants around here, and that way I don't have to run a dripper to each individual plant. Not only will it water all the plants in this area, well, guess what? It's also wetting the entire mulch, the soil around, feeding the living, watering the living organisms in the soil. Everybody in here is happy. And you can see I have another sprayer over there. So I like the sprayers for areas where you have little plants with tiny roots and you have a lot of them in a single area. You're not gonna be able to water like this by hand with a hose. It's just not possible. You see, this system right here comes on 3 times daily. And 3 times daily, it will water for about the sprayers, just because of the sprayers, it will water for about 15 minutes. But then my guavas right there, it's plugged into the same area, but the guava itself total gets about 2 hours daily, 26 gallons of water, because guava plants, they like moist to wet soil, especially when the temperatures are hot. There's no possible way I will be able to water my plants by hand if it wasn't for my drip system, and then water my containers over there, or water my orange tree right here, or my apples over here. There would be no possible way for me to water all this consistently by hand and keep everybody happy. This is why having a drip irrigation system, it's going to be the way to go. You see, I got one over here and I got another one over there. And this line right here comes on every 2 nights for like, I think 4 to 8 hour cycles. So, and my plants are happy, they're growing, and I have no issues. I know drip irrigation systems can be complicated. And if you try hiring somebody to install it for you, it's not going to be cheap. If you're watering just a few plants here in the United States, in my area, I can tell you, you're gonna be paying for a brand new installation, if you didn't have one before, easily over $1,000 for a small system. The system that I have here on my property, I can tell you, if I had paid somebody to do it, I would say easily $5,000 to $10,000. Labor only. That's not materials. So it can be expensive, but if you actually learn how to do it yourself, you can save yourself a lot of money. And watering your plants consistently, never letting them go dry, it's going to be a lot better than any fertilizer, any soil that you can buy out there. There's no comparison. This is the reason why my plants grow like a weed in my area, because they all have consistent watering all the time. It was day and night once I actually set my drip irrigation system that I will never go back to watering by hand. I do water some plants by hand, but that's just temporarily for right now. These raised beds right here, vegetable garden beds, they have a drip irrigation system set up for this area specifically. And these beds right here, right now, they're coming on 3 times daily for about 10 minutes. Why 10 minutes? Because that's how long it takes to saturate this little bed, and that's it. Why 3 times daily? Because vegetable beds, or vegetables, herbs in general, they have very small roots. They don't go that deep in the soil. So most of the roots are closer to the surface. So you really don't need to deep water these plants. But the problem with these plants, they go dry very quickly. So in my area, with the temperatures that we have right now, over 100 degrees every single day, these beds dry 3 times daily. And they're growing, they're doing great, And this one right here actually has a different type of irrigation system, which is what I recommend for beds. This is an actual drip tape. It has a dripper built into the 1/4 inch line every 6 to 12 inches. And each hole, you can see right there, puts out 1/2 gallon of water per hour. But this is enough to water all these little plants right here, and it works amazing. You cannot do this by hand. And this is why, if your vegetable garden beds right now are suffering, looking like crap, I guarantee you it's because you're watering by hand. So for a drip irrigation system, we have the timer, we have the valve system, we have the pressure regulators for the valves, we have your main lines going close to where your trees are, and then you got your spaghetti lines going to each individual container or plant. And then after that, we have the drippers. So let's go ahead and talk about a little more about the drippers themselves, so that way you have an idea what to look for and what not to look for. So this right here is my case where I keep all my drippers. And I can tell you, these are gonna be the main ones that I use for my plants in the ground. These are flathead drippers, and that's it. I know you've seen some of these in my videos. These are all ones that I started using, you know, when I first started with an automatic watering system, but I don't like them because the heads pop off every once in a while. And then these are supposed to be adjustable, so you can adjust the rate. But the problem is when you close them down, well, they will shut off. So it's either fully open or fully closed. They don't like anything in between. They are trash. So the ones that break in my property, as they break, I'm replacing them with this guys right here. Now in the drip world, you're gonna have millions of different choices for drippers. It gets extremely confusing. And we can talk about for hours about drippers, what makes them good or what makes them bad. But I can tell you over the years, installing thousands, not just for myself, but for clients as well, these are a winner. No issues at all, they work perfect. But let me give you a comparison. So most of the drippers out there, they have a flow rate, okay? So this one right here is 4 gallons an hour. Now, these orange ones are 1/2 gallon of water an hour. So what is the difference? So you see this container right here. This container takes about 2 gallons of water daily to keep happy, right? So if I was watering using this dripper right here, mind you, I don't want a lot of runoff, but technically I will only need to water this plant right here 30 minutes every single day using this one right here, because remember, this one puts out 4 gallons an hour, but in 30 minutes it will put out about 2 gallons, which is enough for this container. Obviously I will have to break it off into different cycles, because I don't want 2 gallons all at once, because this plant will still dry out in the middle of the day, even if I gave it 2 gallons in the morning, because it's in a container. Now if I was using this dripper right here, I will have to water this plant right here for 4 hours, because remember, this one is 1/2 gallon of water per hour. So to get 2 gallons, it will take 4 hours. And this is why most people out there are not gonna be able to tell you how often to water your trees without knowing exactly what the ambient temperature around your plant is, how long ago you planted your tree in the ground, and what type of drip irrigation emitters you have. It's just impossible. Nobody can tell you that. I had one customer, his plants, he was watering for 15 minutes 3 times a day, and then he had no idea what emitters he had, but he thought 15 minutes was enough, right? But his plants, you know, they were wilting, brown tips, and they were just dying. And then he swore that it was not water related. But then we started talking about the irrigation drippers right here, and he had a different type of pressure regulating drippers, the red color, and then those put out 2 gallons of water an hour. So he was only watering for 15 minutes. Those poor trees, they were suffering because they were only getting probably about a cup of water, or maybe a little more every single watering, and it was just not enough water because he was not watering long enough. He actually needed to water, you know, for 2-3 hours daily instead of 15 minutes 3 times a day. So this is why it's very important to understand the different components of a drip irrigation system, because that way it will help you understand how to water your plants. Do not ever rely on the landscaper to do it for you, because that's when your plants are going to die. Now let's go ahead and talk about the most common issues you're going to find with your drip irrigation system. So issue number one, should you get a 12-volt system or a 24-volt system? 24-volt system is going to be plugging into the wall, right? A 12-volt system is usually for remote areas where you're going to be powering your system using batteries. So that's why you have a 12-volt system. But if you're going to get a 12-volt system, you're going to need a 12-volt timer, and you're also going to need 12-volt valves. So keep that in mind. And this is going to be for those of you who do not have power. Maybe you're trying to water a brand new property that you just purchased, and then you just want to hook up a solar system. That is the system for you, 12 volts. We can talk about that in the future. Comment below if you want me to make a video about that type of system. Now, for most of you watching right now, you're going to use this right here. This is a 24-volt system. You're going to need a 24-volt timer. What type of timer to get, it doesn't really matter, but I highly recommend you to get a timer that has Wi-Fi capability. That way you can just pull up your phone, and then you can go ahead and then, turn the water on, turn it off. You can see everything. You can even see leaks. It will tell you if the water is running or not running when it's not supposed to or when it's supposed to. So I highly recommend you to get a Wi-Fi timer. Now, what type of valves to get? So the type of valves that I use on my property are two different brands. The first one is going to be a Hunter valve, which you saw earlier. And then the new ones that I've been trying out lately is called Irrigating. And these are commercial valves right here, and they're supposed to be heavier duty. And that's the main reason why I'm using them. Now, any valve you buy out there, it's going to work. Now, the problem is, if you use your system like you're supposed to, things are going to wear out. So inside, the main thing that's going to wear out on these valves right here is going to be the solenoid right here. And all valves are going to have solenoids like this. This is what actually gets the power from your timer. And the way it works, let me show you. Your timer sends a signal to this right here. And then when it gets a signal, this plunger right here, I don't know if you can see it, it compresses, you see? And by this compressing like that, it allows the water to flow. And then when it gets no power, it shuts off. And that's what actually turns your water on and turns it off. But this right here is the main thing that's going to go out in your system. And depending on the brand, for me, usually the Hunter brand lasts about, I would say, in the ground, 4 or 5 years before the solenoids start going out. But this is a very easy fix. You just buy a new one, you screw it in, then you wire it in, and then you're up and running. Now, the second thing that's going to go out in your system is going to be the diaphragm. Now, the diaphragm is going to be inside your valve. It's just like a little rubber thing. It's in here, and it goes up and down, up and down, up and down, right? So that will wear out over time. But so far, you're not going to, usually, based on repairs that I've done for clients in the past, diaphragms usually last, 10 to 20 years. So unless you have really hard water, unfiltered water, and you got a lot of sediment collecting inside your valves, the diaphragm is going to be very rarely going to need to be replaced. So they last a long time. But other than that, that's it. You will not have any other issues besides regular maintenance. What do I mean by regular maintenance? Well, you see these lines right here. Most of my lines are above ground because it makes it easier to repair. I can see where the leaks are, and that way I don't have to dig anything up. But if you are a fancy gardener that wants everything to look perfect, you're gonna have to bury your lines. Now, when you bury your lines, it's gonna make it harder for you to maintain and find leaks. But the main issues you're gonna have usually is gonna be your spaghetti lines like this. These lines right here, especially the ones exposed to the sun, over the years, they're gonna get brittle. In my experience, for me, they last, I would say, between 3 to 5 years, and then they start getting brittle and then they break, depending on the brand. So always buy the best double wall, just better quality spaghetti lines so that way they last longer. But these lines right here, they will break, and then you have to maintain them. So you have to put new lines in. Another thing with the spot splitters right here, these guys, they get clogged every once in a while with calcium. Especially towards the end of the run, a lot of the water gets pushed this area and all the sediment gets trapped in here. So the last line usually gets clogged. So to unclog them, I would say about every week to every 2 weeks, all I gotta do is pull it out, let it drain, and then put the head back on and up and running. But that's gonna be the main maintenance you're gonna do in your system. And if you have a brand new system, you know, you can check your stuff monthly just to make sure everything's running properly. The second main issue that I have are the birds. You know, the birds pull the lines out of the containers, and if it's super hot, your plants are gonna die instantly, especially in my area. Now, the other issue you may have every once in a while, I would say, depending on the quality of your lines, you may have main line leaks on the main line. And they are very obvious because when you turn your system on, the water is just gonna pool, and then, you know, all you gotta do is go in there with a coupling and fix it. Super easy to do. But other than that, that's it. So that is my magical juice, guys. A drip irrigation system. I water my containers with it. I water my plants in the ground with it. And as long as my plants get consistent watering, everything else is irrelevant. I hardly ever fertilize my trees. In containers, I probably do about once a year. And then sometimes I forget. Like, I haven't done any of my container plants right now. And we're in summer. So, and as you can see, they're growing. I mean, it's just unbelievable what consistent watering will do for your plants. And also, you know, consistent watering for plants in the ground, you're not only watering your plants, you're watering the living organisms in the soil. So, and that was what's actually going to feed your plant and make your plants grow big and strong. If you have any questions, comment below. If you want one-on-one help, let's say you're setting up your drip irrigation system and you need a little bit of help, you know, understanding the individual components, join my Patreon. You know, you can get in touch with me directly and I will answer all your questions. About the drippers, there are millions out there. Don't worry about them. Use the ones that I pointed out in this video and you will be good to go. Now, if you really want to research all of them, understand them, go ahead, you know, spend a few hours and you can learn all about them. But I can tell you, I have used all of them out there. And so far, the ones that I showed you in this video are the ones that are winners. As always, if you like the video, don't forget to like it. If you haven't subscribed, what are you waiting for? And I will see you next time.